What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Listen to the podcast available on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram at JT Sports _ and on Twitter at JT Sports __. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about some off-season quarterback battles that you need to keep your eyes on. We're going to start off with the New England Patriots. You have Mac Jones versus Bailey Zappe. Now, there were rumors during the middle portion of this offseason that said the Patriots potentially could look to shop Mac Jones due to the fact that Bill Belichick was really pissed off that Mac Jones decided to seek outside help due to the struggles that the Patriots were facing offensively. And at the NFL's annual owners meeting back in March, Bill Belichick, when he was asked if Mac Jones will compete for the starting quarterback job this season, he gave his typical Belichick-like answer saying, "Everyone will get a chance." And Bill Belichick hasn't publicly came out and committed to Jones as the starter for this season. And Mac Jones last year, he had what people call a sophomore slump. His rookie season was really good, but his second year, he regressed. He had 14 touchdowns. He threw 11 interceptions. And a large reason why Mac Jones took a step back was because Bill Belichick mishandled the offensive coordinator situation. I mean, this guy had the audacity to tell Mac Jones during the second year of his NFL career, one of the most important seasons for a young quarterback's development, that the guy responsible for calling the plays was going to be Matt Patricia, somebody who's pretty much been a defensive coordinator for his whole entire coaching career in the NFL, was responsible for calling the plays for the New England Patriots. And yes, Bill Belichick gave the guy who never called offensive plays in his whole entire coaching career the task of helping Mac Jones develop in his second season. When you think of the most successful quarterbacks in the NFL, a large reason for their success is having stability on the coaching staff. And most quarterbacks make their biggest leaps in improvement in their second season. You look at Trevor Lawrence with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Although he had a new head coach, Urban Meyer held him back his rookie season. Doug Peterson came in year 2 with the Jags. Trevor Lawrence ended up taking a major step in development. Same thing with Joe Burrow. His second season with the Bengals, he took them all the way to the Super Bowl. Look at Justin Herbert. When you look at the key to a young quarterback being successful early in their career, having stability on the coaching staff is key. Most quarterbacks that end up being bust, most of the times it's because they don't end up having that stability on the coaching staff, or their head coach ends up whiffing with the hiring at offensive coordinator. And you look at Bill Belichick and what happened with Mac Jones last season, that was a prime example of why having stability on the coaching staff is key. And then when Mac Jones got injured, he got replaced by Brian Hoyer, who he ended up getting injured. And then Bailey Zappe comes in, and he performs pretty good. He had a pretty good showing when he came in against the Green Bay Packers in the 2 games that he started against the Browns and the Lions. The Patriots won both of those games. And then when Mac Jones was healthy and he came back, he ended up not performing well against the Chicago Bears Monday night. He ended up getting benched in favor of Bailey Zappe. And then Bailey Zappe, he wasn't good in that game neither. And Devin McCourty, who recently retired, he said that last season, the locker room was split on who should remain the starting quarterback between Mac Jones and Bailey Zappe. And I think for Mac Jones this season, him getting Bill O'Brien as his offensive coordinator is going to help him bounce back. Him and Bill O'Brien have a little bit of familiarity with each other, although Bill O'Brien never called plays when Mac Jones was playing at Alabama. Before Mac Jones left for the NFL draft, when Bill O'Brien first arrived on campus at Tuscaloosa, Mac Jones helped teach Bill O'Brien the playbook. And Bill O'Brien, this is somebody who I think is a pretty good offensive coordinator. I do think that he is going to be able to get Mac Jones performing at a pretty solid level. And I expect him to win the starting quarterback job this year. I think that last year was a terrible situation for any young quarterback in their second season to be put into. Like, why the hell do you have a guy who's been the defensive coordinator calling plays? That makes no sense. Mac Jones was a first-round pick. This guy is supposed to be the future of your franchise. And yet Bill Belichick just treated it as like you can just hire anybody to call plays and it's just going to work out. Like, I don't know what the hell Bill Belichick was thinking. Like, he really thought that Matt Patricia was going to be able to help Mac Jones elevate in his second season. Like, Mac Jones was just put in the situation to fail last year. The offensive line wasn't all that great. The wide receiving core wasn't all that great. With Bill O'Brien as the OC, I expect Mac Jones to take a major step in development this season compared to how he performed last year. Now, Bailey Zappe, don't rule him out. You already know that Bill Belichick doesn't play favors. He doesn't care if you were a first-round pick or a seventh-round pick. He's always going to go with the guy who he feels is better. So if Mac Jones ends up starting, it's because he feels Mac Jones is better than Bailey Zappe. But if Bailey Zappe ends up starting over Mac Jones, it's because he feels that Zappe is the better quarterback. It's going to be no politicking with this QB situation. The better guy is going to end up being the starter. And I do think that guy is going to end up being Mac Jones. Mac Jones, according to reports, he's looked pretty good in OTA so far. Bill O'Brien's system, I think, is going to be perfect for Mac Jones to end up being able to bounce back this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing Bailey Zappe having some reports going around about how he's also performing pretty well, because Bailey Zappe, as I mentioned, this guy went 2-0 in the 2 games that he started for New England. He had a pretty decent outing in his first go around when he first had to come in on short notice when Brian Hoyer got injured against the Packers. So Bailey Zappe is also somebody who should be able to benefit from having a legitimate offensive coordinator. We tried to label Mac Jones a bust because he struggled, but many people fail to realize that the guys who you have on your coaching staff are really pivotal to being able to get the most out of the players that you have on your team. Because you want to know why? The job of a coach is to put his players in the proper situations to succeed. And Bill Belichick, he failed at that last year. And I'm just really surprised that Bill Belichick went about the offensive coordinator situation the way that he did. Like, it made no sense making Matt Patricia the offensive coordinator. Like, this dude had no business calling plays for New England last year. And I don't even get how he can get mad at Mac Jones for going out and try to seek outside help. I mean, this guy's back was against the wall. You think somebody wants to just go out there and struggle? There was a reason why Mac Jones was always frustrated every time he came on the sidelines and why he was cussing out Matt Patricia, because the guy didn't know what he was doing. He was a novice when it came to calling plays on the offensive side of the football. And it's really stupid that Bill Belichick would put Mac Jones in a situation like that. That is his franchise QB. This is the guy who he drafted in the first round to succeed Tom Brady. Why would he compromise him like that? Like, that shit was stupid as hell. It made no sense. And kudos to Bill Belichick for fixing this and hiring Bill O'Brien as the OC for New England. But I am expecting Mac Jones to win this job. I think that Bill O'Brien is going to be able to get Mac Jones playing at a serviceable level. Bill O'Brien, although he hasn't came out and said who the starting quarterback is going to be, he's just in the dark like me and you are. I do think that he feels Mac Jones is going to be the guy. He had a lot of good things to say about Mac Jones. A lot of the Patriots teammates have said that Mac Jones has done a really good job this offseason with learning the new system and putting in the work to improve this year. So I'm banking on Mac Jones winning this starting quarterback job. The next quarterback battle that we have on deck, the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson versus Gardner Minshew. Anthony Richardson was the 4th overall selection by the Colts in this past year's NFL draft. And I keep hearing a lot of people saying that Anthony Richardson needs to sit behind Gardner Minshew for a year or two so he can learn the NFL game. And let's just be honest, bro. Anthony Richardson isn't going to learn shit on the bench holding the clipboard for Gardner Minshew. Like, why do people think that every quarterback needs to sit on the bench so he can become successful? That's not the recipe all the time for a quarterback developing and performing at a high level. Like, have y'all not seen Trey Lance with the 49ers? This guy sat behind Jimmy Garoppolo for a year, and tell me where that got him. Absolutely nowhere. So you look at Anthony Richardson, yeah, he may not be the most polished passer, but he isn't as raw as a lot of people make him out to be. This guy has incredible athleticism. He's probably the most athletically gifted quarterback to ever come out of the draft. He has a strong arm. He has good pocket awareness. And I think you're going to see Anthony Richardson in a rare situation where he ends up being better year one in the NFL versus how he was his final season at Florida. Because I don't know how many of you guys watching this keep up with college football, but if you watch Florida's offense during their spring game not too long ago, it looked even worse than what it did last year with Anthony Richardson. And the reason for that is because the offense that Florida was running was pretty elementary. It didn't really do a good job at maximizing all of Anthony Richardson's talents. And I think you're going to see Anthony Richardson have a similar rookie season to what Justin Herbert had. Remember when Justin Herbert was coming out of Oregon and everybody was saying that he was going to be the next big bust? Then he ends up starting in replace of Tyrod Taylor, who ended up having something happen before the start of that Kansas City Chiefs game. And 15 minutes before kickoff, the head coach goes up to Justin Herbert and he says, "Hey, Justin, you're about to start." And the dude ends up balling out. And people ended up being so surprised, talking about how is this guy better in the NFL than he was at college? You want to know why? Because the system that Justin Herbert was playing in at college held him back. Same thing for Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson going to the Indianapolis Colts was the best landing spot for him, with him receiving better coaching. I think you're going to see him be a lot better year one than what he was his final season with the Florida Gators. Shane Steichen was formerly the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was a large reason why Jalen Hurts made the development that he made last season. Jalen Hurts ended up taking Philadelphia to the Super Bowl, plus he was a finalist for MVP last year, and Shane Steichen deserves a lot of credit for that. And I believe that the system that Shane Steichen is going to run with the Colts, he's going to use Anthony Richardson in a similar way that he used Jalen Hurts. And just because Anthony Richardson isn't a great passer doesn't mean that the guy can't start. Like, it's been proven over the last couple of years that you can win with a quarterback who may not be that polished as a passer, but has a lot of athletic ability. Remember what the Ravens did? Lamar Jackson's rookie season, they went to the playoffs. You want to know why? It wasn't because Lamar Jackson was a great passer, but it was because he was an incredible athlete. And they used that running ability while they allowed Lamar to develop as a passer on the backside. And you look at Anthony Richardson going to the Indianapolis Colts, you already have a pretty good team around them. You're going to have Jonathan Taylor. You're going to have Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Alex Pierce. So this guy is going to a pretty good situation for him to succeed. I'm expecting him to be way better this season than what he was his final season last year at the University of Florida. Now, you do have Gardner Minshew, and I kind of feel a little bit bad for Gardner Minshew because every time you listen to one of his press conferences, all people keep asking him about is Anthony Richardson. How is it going when it comes to mentoring Anthony Richardson and teaching him the playbook and whatnot? And I just feel so bad for Gardner Minshew because this dude is a pretty serviceable quarterback. Like, I think Gardner Minshew is good enough to be a starter on a handful of teams. It's just that he hasn't really been given the opportunity. And he's been the backup for the Philadelphia Eagles for the past 2 years. So he comes to Indianapolis following Shane Steichen. He should be a little bit familiar with his system, what Shane Steichen was to do offensively. And then the 2 games that he started in for the Eagles last season, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. He was better the previous season when he came in than what he was last year. I don't know why he kind of took a little bit of a step back. But I think Gardner Minshew, if he ends up winning this job, he probably could end up leading the Colts to more wins as the starter compared to Anthony Richardson, because with Anthony Richardson, you're going to have way more ups and downs. You're going to have some good performances, but you're also going to have some bad performances. With Gardner Minshew, you're going to see more consistent performances, although he's not a guy who's going to will you to a win. He's not going to carry you. If I had to pick who I think should be the starting quarterback right now, I probably would go Gardner Minshew. If you're trying to win right away, Gardner Minshew probably gives you the best chance at that. But if you're trying to look at the long-term implications and you're trying to develop Anthony Richardson, I believe that Anthony Richardson needs to be on the field week 1, because this guy isn't going to learn all that much sitting on the bench behind Gardner Minshew. This is somebody who doesn't really have a lot of experience being a starting quarterback. He only started 1 season at Florida at the collegiate level. So for him to get better, he needs to get more experience. And what's the best way to gain more experience? By getting in-game reps. Why does everybody think the key to a quarterback getting better is sitting on a damn bench? It doesn't work out the way a lot of you guys make it seem all the time. Like I said earlier, Trey Lance sat on the bench behind Jimmy Garoppolo for a year, and he was terrible. And this is with Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive minds in the game. And yet, he still wasn't able to develop. So you look at Anthony Richardson, throwing him to the Wolves week 1 isn't the worst thing that can happen. He should be able to find ways to win games. Shane Steichen should be able to find a way to win with Anthony Richardson's elite mobility and athleticism. And the guy already has pretty solid pocket awareness. He has a really strong arm. Like, I think that Anthony Richardson would be perfectly fine if he ends up getting the starting quarterback job year 1 with the Colts. So who do I think is going to win this quarterback job? I really believe that is going to be Anthony Richardson. The coaching staff of Indianapolis has been saying nothing but positive things about Anthony Richardson. And I do know that it is OTAs. Everybody looks good in shirts and tank tops. But this coaching staff is really sold on Anthony Richardson being the guy. And Anthony Richardson wants to come in and he wants to be the starter week 1. And if he ends up winning the starting job, I don't think he's going to be as bad as what a lot of people think. A large reason why he struggled at Florida was because the offense that he was in held him back. And Florida fans may not want to agree with that, but you look at how they looked in the spring game, I don't really think Anthony Richardson was all that big of a problem. I really think the coaching staff at Florida held him back. Him going to Indianapolis, you're probably going to see this dude end up being way better than what he was his final season with the Gators. I expect Anthony Richardson to start week 1. Although he may not be the better quarterback when he starts over Gardner Minshew, I think that when you look at him developing and becoming a better quarterback, the only way that's going to happen is with this guy getting more reps live in game. The most intriguing quarterback battle that most people are probably going to be having their eyes on is going to be down there in Tampa with the Buccaneers. You have Baker Mayfield versus Kyle Trask. This is Baker's 4th team in 3 years. He got traded to the Carolina Panthers late in the offseason, and obviously we saw that didn't work out. Baker Mayfield got cut. He didn't even last the whole entire season. Matt Rule got fired midway through the year. And then, on some Disney movie shit, he gets signed by the LA Rams and Sean McVay, and just after being signed, a couple of days later, he goes in against the Las Vegas Raiders Thursday Night Football, and he leads the Rams to the freaking win, and he ends up having a really good performance. He throws for 230 passing yards, completes 62.9% of his passes, and the touchdown in that Thursday night win over the Raiders. And then he has a Christmas game that we're all going to remember because he won the MVP award when he balled out against the Denver Broncos, when they just completely dismantled Denver in front of everybody to watch. He completed 85% of his passes. He threw for 230 yards in that game, and he had 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. And for Baker Mayfield, the team that he's going to be going to in Tampa is probably one of the best situations that he's been put in since the year he took the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. You have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin at wide receiver. You have Rachaad White at running back. The offensive line is a little bit of a mystery. I don't really think the offensive line is going to be good, but I don't think it's going to be bad. I think at best this offensive line should be average. But with the weapons that Baker Mayfield has around him and offensive coordinator Dave Canales running a QB-friendly system, Baker Mayfield should be able to have a bounce-back year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And with what we saw from him with Sean McVay, he kind of showed everybody that as long as you give him the proper coaching and the proper pieces around him to succeed, he can produce for you. Now, he'll probably never end up being a top 10 QB, and he may not be the long-term answer for you at QB, but he is somebody who can come in and be serviceable enough as long as you give him the necessary pieces for him to be able to thrive. And I think he has that with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization. Now, you have Kyle Trask, who was drafted in the second round of the 2021 NFL draft by Bruce Arians and company. He is your prototypical pocket passer. He's 6'5", 240 pounds. He has a really strong arm. He doesn't really give you much when it comes to mobility. If things break down, then that's pretty much it. And for Kyle Trask, he wasn't good in last year's preseason, okay? And maybe he ends up improving over the course of this offseason under their new offensive coordinator, because he has really put a lot of emphasis on stressing that he wants his system to be easy to learn. He wants it to be QB friendly with everything that they want to do. So Kyle Trask could also improve from having a new offensive coordinator and a new staff in place. But ultimately, I think that Baker Mayfield should be the overwhelming favorite to win this starting job. I don't really think Kyle Trask is really going to be that good. In the preseason, you can kind of tell if a guy has it or not. You look at what Dak Prescott did in the preseason. He balled out. Same thing with Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell. Most of the times, guys who struggle in the preseason ultimately not end up being all that great. And then in the regular season finale last year, when he came in, when the Buccaneers had benched their starters, he didn't even look good against the Atlanta Falcons, and their defense was one of the worst in the NFL last year. So I think Baker Mayfield is probably going to end up winning the starting quarterback job. If you had to ask me to rate my confidence on Baker winning this job on a scale of 1 through 10, I probably would say 9.9. And the only reason I give a 0.1 chance to Kyle Trask is just because people can always surprise you. You never know what to expect, but I think this is Baker Mayfield's job to lose. The Arizona Cardinals, we know that Kyler Murray is still rehabbing from that ACL injury that he suffered late last year. He most likely isn't going to be ready to go week 1. He is going to miss a couple of games to start the season. So the Arizona Cardinals are right now trying to figure out who's going to be QB1 going into week 1 this year. Currently, right now, they have Colt McCoy, who's injured. You have rookie Clayton Tune, David Blough, and Jeff Driskel. Now, Colt McCoy probably is the favorite to win this job, although he is dealing with an injury right now. He's been the Cardinals' backup QB for the last couple of years. And last year when he came in, he wasn't that great. He threw 3 interceptions. He only had 1 touchdown, but the offensive line was going through a lot of injuries, and the play calling wasn't the greatest with Cliff Kingsbury. So maybe with a new coaching staff in place, if Colt McCoy does end up getting the start, he'll end up improving. And he is the most experienced quarterback out of all the QBs that they currently have in this QB room right now. He's kind of like a coach on the field, and he's a good mentor to have in your quarterback room if you have a young quarterback like Clayton Tune. But I really believe that Clayton Tune is going to end up winning this job. And if you're a Cardinals fan, your mouth may be a little bit dropped. You may be saying, JT, you think Clayton Tune is going to end up winning the starting QB job for Arizona this year? Yes, I do, because if you're Arizona, what do you have to lose? Like, you drafted a rookie QB in Clayton Tune, who is pretty solid. A lot of people in the draft community were pretty high on Clayton Tune. There's been a lot of videos that came out saying that he's a little bit of a sleeper. And I can understand why. If you go back and you watch his tape at Houston, this is somebody who has solid mobility. He has pretty good accuracy. He makes pretty good decisions with the football. He's really good when it comes to throwing the football against man coverage. He struggles against zone coverage. His arm strength is average at best. But if you're Arizona, I don't see the reason why you shouldn't start Clayton Tune, because this is a young QB who hasn't taken any reps in the NFL. So why not see what you have in him? For all we know, this guy may end up being a pretty serviceable QB. And if you want to move on from Kyler Murray at the end of this season, if Clayton Tune ends up performing at a pretty high level, you could maybe have your QB of the future. But if Clayton Tune struggles, then you end up having a higher draft pick and next year's draft. So I don't really think the Arizona Cardinals have anything to lose by starting Clayton Tune week 1. And this is supposed to be a rebuild or a roster overhaul anyway, so it kind of would benefit them throwing Clayton Tune in, even if he struggles or not, because if he struggles, then, as I mentioned, they'll have the opportunity to have a high pick in next year's draft. But if he does good, then you potentially may end up having somebody who can be a decent backup for you or be a low-end starter for you if you want to move on from Kyler Murray somewhere in the future. They also have David Blough, who has played a couple of years prior to arriving in Arizona for the Detroit Lions. He was recently re-signed this offseason to a 1-year deal. The Cardinals signed him late last season after Kyler Murray got injured, and he started in 2 games last year against the 49ers, which they got blown out in that game. He had 2 picks in the touchdown. They lost to the Falcons in a close game. He was pretty okay in that game, but I don't think David Blough is really going to end up being in the mix for the starting QB job. Even though he's competing for it, I think at best he probably is competing to be the QB3 on this roster. You have Jeff Driskel, who has been around the block. This guy has played for several teams: the Bengals, the Lions, the Broncos. He's been on the Houston Texans roster for the previous 2 years, but I think he's more of a camp body just because Colt McCoy dealing with that injury, not really at 100%. They're trying to be a little cautious with him, so they brought in Jeff Driskel for extra assurance. But I think he's more of another camp body. I don't really expect him to make the roster, and if he does, he'll probably end up being on a practice squad maybe. And the last quarterback battle that we have to talk about, the Tennessee Titans. You have Malik Willis versus Will Levis. Now, neither one of these guys are going to be competing for the starting QB job this year. The Titans have pretty much already said that Ryan Tannehill is going to be the guy week 1. But this is going to be a battle to decide who's going to potentially end up being Ryan Tannehill's successor when he decides to retire or when Tennessee moves on from him. Now, they drafted Will Levis in the second round of this past year's draft, and many people expected this guy to be a first-round pick. Not too many people had him falling out of the top 10 or the top 15, but there were rumors saying that he didn't really interview well. He rubbed a lot of executives and coaches the wrong way with his cockiness and his attitude. He's kind of jacked up. He's like a bodybuilder at QB, which I don't really see nothing wrong with that. And for Will Levis, he has the potential to end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but the problem is that he's super raw. He doesn't really have great pocket awareness. He doesn't do a good job reading defenses. He can get really reckless with the football at times. And from what I've read so far about how he has performed in OTAs, he kind of has performed the way that I've expected him to. He's been up and down. He's had some big throws, but he also has had a lot of misses. And that's a little bit alarming because during OTAs, you're only in tank tops and shorts, and many rookie QBs such as Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and even Anthony Richardson have been getting a lot of praise. And for Will Levis, he kind of hasn't been getting as much praise as those other rookie QBs because he kind of has been a little bit up and down. And then you have Malik Willis, right? Malik Willis was drafted in the previous year's draft in the 3rd round. And the couple of games that he started in last season, this dude did not look good. But I don't really think it was his fault necessarily. I don't really think the Titans did a good job at putting him in a scheme that maximized his talent. And when you have a quarterback like a Malik Willis, he's not a plug-and-play kind of guy. This isn't a guy who you just plug and play and run the same offense that you did when you had Ryan Tannehill. Like, you have to take time to design a specific offense around him, like what the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson, what the Chicago Bears did with Justin Fields, and what the Indianapolis Colts are going to do with Anthony Richardson. And when you look at their OC last year, like, this guy got arrested for like a DUI. That's something that you expect out of your players, not the guy who is a coach on your team and calls the plays. So the offensive coordinator wasn't really good at calling the plays. Many Titans fans were glad that he ended up getting fired. And for Malik Willis, this is somebody who doesn't have the character concerns that Will Levis had when he was coming out. This is somebody who is a hard worker. He's a likable guy in the locker room. He's going to bust his tail every single day to get better. I expect Malik Willis to improve, and hopefully with a new OC, he should be able to thrive. Now, if he ends up struggling and he gets beat out by Will Levis, there's many reports that say that he most likely is going to end up being a strong candidate to get cut. And if he gets cut, I don't really think that would be the worst situation for him to happen. I'm pretty sure he'll get picked up fairly quickly. I could see him going to the Rams or a team like Seattle. But for Malik Willis, he was so bad last season that the Tennessee Titans ended up signing Joshua Dobbs off the Detroit Lions practice squad, and it made him start in their last 2 games, which Tennessee was a team that was still competing for the division. They were trying to make it to the playoffs. So the fact that they didn't have confidence in Malik Willis and they went out and signed the guy off the practice squad to start and try to help them make a playoff push tells you everything you need to know about how they felt about Malik Willis and his play on the field. And plus, they got a new general manager. He wasn't the guy who drafted Malik Willis, so obviously the patience isn't going to be there. But Malik Willis, I'm really banking on him improving because this is somebody who is a hard worker. He's really dedicated. He puts a lot of work in, a lot of time in. He's a likable guy. He's very personable. I expect him to be able to beat out Will Levis because just keeping it 100 with you guys, I watched a lot of Will Levis film. And around this time last year, when I saw him in the first round of mock drafts, like, I was really surprised. I was like, bro, this dude is really projected to be a first round pick. No way it happens. Then he ended up getting drafted in the second round. And I'm just not really a big fan of Will Levis. And I'm not biased. I'm just keeping it 100 with you guys. I am somebody who watches a lot of SEC football. You guys can watch all of the college football content that I post on this channel or on the podcast. Like, I'm pretty knowledgeable when it comes to college football. I've watched a good amount of Will Levis tape. This guy was not it. I remember there was a game against Ole Miss, right? They were driving down the score, game on the line, and the dude fumbled the football. Like, the dude is insanely reckless with the football. And this guy came from a NFL system. They had Liam Cohen, who came from the LA Rams coaching staff. So for Will Levis to struggle the way that he did last season doesn't really give me a lot of confidence that he's going to succeed as an NFL QB. Like, for those of you guys who are doubting Anthony Richardson, I think you have more reasons to doubt Will Levis than you do AR. You got the character concerns, plus this guy has really spotty footwork. Like, this guy is way more raw than what Anthony Richardson is. And you may not think it, but at least Anthony Richardson has good pocket awareness. Will Levis can't sense pressure at all. He's kind of a little bit like what Daniel Jones was when he was coming out of Duke. Like, Daniel Jones, the knock on Danny Dimes has been his inability to sense pressure at times, which can be a pro and a con, because that means that regardless of how many defenders are closing in on you, you're still going to sit in there and make the tough throw despite how hard you may get popped. But at times, if you can't sense pressure, ultimately you're going to end up having a lot of sacks. And Will Levis, he is pretty athletic. He doesn't have the athleticism that Malik Willis has. But if this guy ends up panning out and he develops and I end up being wrong about him, this guy could end up becoming a top 5 QB for Tennessee in the foreseeable future. But for right now, I expect Will Levis to win. Well, I expect Malik Willis to win the backup quarterback job for the Tennessee Titans this season. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, make sure that you go ahead, leave us with a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. Share this episode with your friends, family members, and acquaintances on all of your social media platforms. And I will see you guys shortly with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.